It starts with a gust of wind in the frigid Antarctic. As the barometric pressure drops, the wind speed increases. The wind roars across thousands of miles of open ocean, organizing the chaotic sea into long bands of pure energy. Southern Ocean swells. These southerly ground swells march up the South African coast and bend into the perfectly contoured point of Jeffreys Bay. J Bay is a geographic fluke. It is the world's greatest right-hand point break. No question. Nothing can compare. When a deep south swell meets up with a 10-knot southwest wind and a medium to low tide, the result is perfection. A pure line of ocean energy that can be ridden for over a mile.
You can take a picture of something you see. Future where we're at. You could climb a ladder up to the sun. Or ride a solo body and soul or two. Something that's never been done.
The wave itself is thick, fast, and powerful. The sensation of speed is incredible. Each turn can be a 25-yard long arc. The wave is so perfect that it immediately shows up anything lacking in style or in approach. The wave is very easy to ride, but extremely difficult to ride well. My name is Shaun Tomson, and over the last 35 years I've been intimately linked with J Bay. Born and raised in Durban, South Africa, I first surfed the wave in 1968 when I was only 12 years old. The shortboard revolution had shaken up the surfing world, and my cousin Michael and I, escorted by my father Connie, were on our way to Cape Town to compete in the South African Surfing Championships. It was our first safari away from home, and my father decided we were to stop off for a week at J Bay on the way down. I remember arriving in the evening and checking into the town's only hotel, the Beach. We were 600 miles from home, and my cousin and I could barely sleep, thinking about the possibility of perfect surf the next day. The next morning we woke up to a perfectly shaped 46-foot swell bending into the point. Totally empty, just us. The three of us paddled out alone, and my enduring memory of Jeffreys Bay is of the perfect waves I rode on that first day so many years ago.
From where you paddle out, there's a perfect keyhole where it's like man-made. It seems like something to draw in your art class in high school. Well, there's a keyhole where you paddle out right in front of the wave. From the keyhole, you can catch a wave, and you can ride it down to another keyhole, which is like a football field away, and you can get barreled the whole way across. If it's big enough, you can catch it from the same keyhole. You can go about 3 football fields length on one ride. It's one of those waves where it's so inviting and you think you got it, and as soon as you think you got it, it outraces you. So the whole time you have to stay on your toes. And the guys that do surf good out there, it seems like they're always have a really big bottom turn, which can project them into the front of the wave.
The best way to ride J Bay is by finding that pure line, on the face and through the tube. Each turn, each maneuver must mean something. At J Bay, less is more. The surfer becomes an artist. You write your own story, paint your own canvas, carve your own pure line with style, rhythm, and power. It is the ultimate way for free expression.
A lot of guys wait for the right section and then they do their huge maneuver and
when you see that huge manoeuvre be done when you're not ready for it, that's the thing I love about J-Bay. You expect someone to go, oh, you look at this section ahead of it, they've got, and then they do this huge manoeuvre, and then it sets them up for the, the epic tube ride on the next section or whatever.
Even though it's such a perfect wave, it is a tricky wave. You got to take different approaches off the bottom. Sometimes you got to climb the outside of the barrel and hit it, or sometimes you got to do a running floater. Other times you got to come up and do a horizontal carve. Sometimes you got to come square off the bottom. And you always have to be mindful of what the next section is doing. Is it running? Am I going to pull back in? Is it, is it going to slow down? So there's like all this mental work that goes into surfing the wave too. And I rode a wave there 2 years ago that was about 2 minutes and 35 seconds, one ride.
You can see it going down the point and kind of wrapping around, and you're always looking towards the next section. But the thing I enjoyed was you just draw a high line, you get tons of speed, come around a section, and it's one of those ways where you just want to keep the pedal down. You got to keep the speed going. But there's certain sections where you can kind of fade and get locked into the tube. And I mean, there's nothing like watching Andy Irons or Kelly Slater or Bruce. When those guys paddle out and surf, it's like they get speed from places where I don't even know where they get it from. But it's incredible watching those guys at the level they're at surfing a wave this good.
When the offshore wind howls, the surfer can hang high on the face, holding an impossible trim, while a wall feathers 50 yards ahead of him. Hold the trim, hold it, and then let go, flying faster than ever before. Feeling every inch in your board's bottom curve, and feeling the fine, smooth texture of the wave's face through your board and through the soles of your feet. I've surfed Jeffreys Bay many times since that first day back in 1968, and many things have changed. Back then we were in fact riding only the tail end of the wave. We'd sit out in the lineup and watch these grinding tubes wind down for about a mile before they'd get to us. We called the spot south of us indicators, and we all thought back then it was too fast and too dangerous to surf. It wasn't until the next year in 1969 that the real J-Bay was discovered, ridden, and eventually renamed Super Tubes. Seen here in this video, in early 1970, my cousin Michael, along with Wayne Lynch, armed with the new shortboards of the era, were some of the first surfers to ride this extremely fast section of the break. Jeffreys Bay has been ridden for around 40 years now, and the place has grown from just a small village to a successful town with growing businesses and a booming real estate market. Two South African legends both claim to have discovered J-Bay in the early 1960s. John Whitmore, a renowned surfboard shaper from Cape Town, maintains he told Bruce Brown about the spot when he came to film the original Endless Summer, and Bruce ended up at the wrong spot. Max Wetteland, one of the fathers of South African surfing, claims he found the spot after speaking to Bruce Brown about it in Durban.
Bruce told us that on his way up to Durban, he came across this place where the Bolex camera, in those days, they were winders, and he was filming a wave or waves on what Robert August and Mike Henson were riding. His camera would run out of power on the wave. Couldn't get the whole wave in one wind. And we were doing the same thing. Wow. Where was that, Bruce? He's telling us, Cape St. Francis.
Bruce Brown had missed Jeffreys Bay by about 20 miles. However, he had discovered a completely different, world-class right-hand point break in Cape St. Francis. This spot would later come to be known as Bruce's Beauties.
A few months later, a few of us got together. Hey, got to get down there. Got to find this Cape St. Francis. We'd never been there, although John Whitmore had told them to go there. We got to Cape St. Francis, and it was just dead flat at the place he told us to go. There were no waves at all.
At the time, Max did not know that Cape St. Francis was an extremely fickle break. In reality, it only breaks 4 to 5 times a year, and it was an absolute miracle that Bruce Brown had found the spot on the best day of the year.
We had spoken to John Whitmore again, and he said we should look at the place called Jeffreys Bay. There's a Mr. Coetzee there, and he makes wonderful fish and chip shop there. So we drove up towards, from the town, up this direction, and to the end of the road, where there's a big fence, and there was a farm. Saw the magnitude break and thought, oh boy, this is no good. Got in the car, turned around, started heading home. And halfway, when we got across the little river here, we started heading up the hill a bit. We had to get out the car for a leak. So we got out the car for a leak, standing there, you know, talking about the waves we've had, and gee, you wonder where this place could be. And we saw the point from the road, Jeffreys Bay, and there was a swell. There was white water at the end of it, and it went forever. And we knew we had missed it completely.
Max Wetteland returned to Durban and spread the word about his discovery, Jeffreys Bay. He returned each year along with more and more surfers, and by the late 1960s, J Bay was on the map.
When I started living here, if you saw 3 cars in a day, it would be a lot. There was no traffic or anything. I mean, it was really just a little fishing village. This was all farmland. And there was a guy at the gate you had to pay money to come to walk through the land to get to the beach.
So obviously when you first arrived here, it was, you know, it's like it was a surf adventure, you know. You arrived here with a dirt road into Jeffreys Bay. And when we saw the waves for the first time, we were just stoked, we were awed, you know. It was amazing. I mean, we saw supers for the first time. We didn't really surf there because our equipment wasn't really geared up for that kind of surf in the 60s. You know, we just come from the longboards to the shortboards. And so we mainly surfed tubes into the point.
Hatchett was the first world champion to surf in South Africa. He'd won the world title in Australia in 1964 and was invited out to give an exhibition at South Africa's first pro contest in 1969. He shaped his own innovative boards, had a beautiful style, and got us all stoked when he flew down the line at 100 miles an hour on his little speed board at the newly discovered section called Tubes.
You had to have a gun, a semi-gun that could go fast. And most of the time you were surfing in the wind. You know, you had to draw good clean lines and make long sections. Most of the guys probably came here or, you know, with shorter, more stubbier boards, and obviously would end up ordering boards from the local shapers. There's always been a few shapers, not as many as now. But there always was a couple of shapers in town, at least 3.
In the 1970s, J Bay was an eccentric scene. It was the epicenter of escapist youth culture. It was South Africa's Woodstock at the beach all year long. Max Wetteland had moved down by 1971 to shape boards, along with one of the country's best surfers from the 60s, Anthony van den Heuvel. The community of surfers started to develop, and their free and easy ways ran headlong into the conservative Afrikaans culture that dominated J Bay at the time. Drug busts, beatings, and general disapproval by the community of the surfers' free and easy lifestyle.
Revolution summer.
They were all coming here, wanting to surf it, while it was still a farm. So finally the farmer gave up and said to his son, what are we going to do? So he put it up to the real estate people and started selling land, because we were encouraging him to do that. And he never looked back.
One of the great surfers that left their mark on J Bay in the mid-70s was Australian Terry Fitzgerald. He was called the Sultan of Speed, and his Hawaiian-influenced style fitted perfectly with J Bay's roping long walls. Fitz swooped from section to section, carving some of the longest, smoothest, most stylish lines ever seen at J Bay.
There's a point on the face with a concave where if you stick your concave right, you can actually go past the vertical. And to hit that point and hold it, I think that's such a high risk line to hit and hold. You know, that's probably the apex of where I was trying to take my surfing, not only at the time, but now. Can you imagine that, you know, perfectly lined up wall, and being able to run that line and hold it, that's as good as it gets.
1975, my last year as a teenager, was when I really began to understand the wave, and was when I began to take my surfing to the next level. I had an amazing 7/0 pintail, a single concave under my front foot and 2 concave V's behind my back foot, and this board really enabled me to surf the place better than I thought possible. I spent nearly 2 months down at J Bay that winter, sometimes surfing alone in perfect 6 to 8 foot surf, carving down the line and pulling into deep, long tubes through impossibles. And though I didn't realize it at the time, I had become a part of the famous wave's history.
Shaun was easily by far the best surfer out here in the 70s and 80s.
He was the creator of modern day tube riding. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But before that, there was the Jerry Lopez style of tube riding, and Shaun Tomson was the contemporary version of tube riding, which we still see today.
You know, Shaun's surfing out here in the 70s and 80s, you know, stands the test of time.
Each year, the premier surf contest held at J Bay is the Billabong Pro. Pro surfing has grown by 1,000-fold in the last 2 decades. In 1981, I won the inaugural event here at J Bay and took home a mere $500. This year, the champion will cash a $50,000 check for the win. Pro surfing is big business, and with it comes worldwide media attention. Networks from all over the globe are here to catch an image of the best 44 surfers in the world. I spent 16 years on the Pro Tour and won a world title way back in 1977. However, living in California, I had not been back to J Bay in over 12 years. This July, I got a phone call from the good people at Billabong, and before I knew it, I was standing at the car park, gazing out over my beloved Super Tubes. My job at this year's event was to commentate live via the webcast, so I took a seat, prepared to watch the world's best surfers take apart the world's greatest right-hand point break.
Every surfer in the whole world wants to surf J Bay with one guy out when it's pumping, and you know, there's only 45 that are allowed. It's like a winning the lotto or something.
Watch this, watch this. I'll be hitting it through the section. That kid I was talking about earlier, he's going to just go to the section, wait for the high line, comes out, nice and clear on side. Now watch this section again.
I went out there thinking that I needed to look for the barrel because you know the tubes were probably the easiest thing to do. Turns are really tricky in those conditions. So I was looking for the barrel, and there was one actually that could have come out of it, would have been a good score, but just got clipped. That wind's pretty hard to deal with. But yeah, it's good fun.
That's a good wave. Oh, this thing's gonna barrel.
It's time to roll the windows down. Feel the cold roll around. We are heading out of town.
If you come to Jeffreys Bay for your first time, the wave does elude you a little bit. It looks super hollow, but the energy part of the wave's right up to the top of the wave. And if you go to the bottom too much, the wave will just pass you up. Or if you try and do too radical a turn as you go, you know, the wave will pass you up as well. So it's a combination between still doing good turns and being able to keep up with the wave. And at first, it can be really frustrating.
You really got to read the sections a few seconds, 5-10 seconds ahead. You got to see what the wall's doing out wide. You got to
look at the wave before to see where it broke and where it ran. Because generally each wave's about the same, but the next one usually runs a little further out wide and down the line. But once you get one of those really big ones, they generally have enough angle sideways to the point where you're going to make the wave. So you're just trying to see what you can do, see the lines you can draw, and where the pockets are on the wave. And there's not really so much sections like a beach break would have, but there are sections that you can bank off of and get the nice turns and find the right line on the wave. A 5 to 6 foot walled up offshore wave at J-Bay is it's really like very few waves in the world. There's not a lot of waves like it. So when you get one, you feel like you just purchased a house or something. But it's free.
Country Feeling was the brand that started the big business here at J-Bay, and it was Shaun, the founder and current owner, who put together the first contest way back in 1981. Cheron is a true local success story. She's taken a personal hobby and grown it into the biggest surf clothing distributorship in the country.
I worked as a waitress in the Wimpy Bar for a while. It's like a fast food place. And then an Australian girl taught me how to make bikinis. So I had this little hand machine, and that's actually how I started. And I did the board shorts for the surfers. So the guys would come around, I'd measure them, and they'd pick their little fabric, and they'd go off and come back in 2 days' time and pick up their shorts. They picked their buttons too, I had little hand-painted buttons, sew them, and that's basically how I lived. The shorts were so small and tight in those days that the side seams had to have the perfect curve so they could crouch in the tube, and they were quite technical.
It says made with real soul, 1973. And they didn't fall apart because I made them.
And there were 2 or 3 surf shops, one in Durban, Port Elizabeth and Cape Town, and they phoned and said, I believe you make trunks, board shorts. And I went, yeah, and they said, can we buy some from you? And I went, yeah, how many? And they went, 6 pairs. I went, wow, yes. And we got a label, and we were a big deal. We had labels on our shorts, and we were a big deal. So the first contest we had was with the Beach Hotel. It was 82 or 81. And then, of course, the next year, are you having a contest? Yes. And then in 84 we had an international event, a Country Feeling international event. It was probably a 1-star, I can't remember. A friend of mine said to me the night before, what about the surf? Now the only weather forecast we had was a little synoptic chart in the paper. And all these lines going across, and I went, oh, it looks like there's going to be surf, but I'm so busy, I really can't worry about that. We will definitely have surf. Woke up the next morning, it was 8 foot. It's the best surf we've had for the contest, I think, for 20 years. And Mark Occhilupo came to surf it.
Ocky's been coming to J-Bay now for over 22 years. He's a true love for this place, and when he is in town, he's one of the happiest guys around. It all started here for Occy way back in 1984. Gordon Merchant, the owner of Billabong, brought the 19-year-old Aussie kid here to surf the Country Feeling Pro. Occy launched a brilliant backhand attack against the greatest surfers of the era, and for the first time, made his mark on modern surfing.
Yeah, the 84 event, I remember sitting on the sand dunes when the contest just started, and the swell was only about just starting to come through, and everyone was expecting a really good swell, you know, just through on the map, you know, there was a big low coming over. There was no internet back then, but I remember it was 2 to 4 foot, and the contest started and just went 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, just in the day. And that afternoon, We served some unbelievable J-Bay, and it was myself and Tom Carroll out there, and we met guys like Derek Timperley and Wes Laine and Willie Morris.
Occhi would make the final and go on to beat Hans Hedeman to record his first Pro Tour win.
It was a pretty tight final, but I had really good heats the whole way through and beat Hans, and that was an all-time win for me. I mean, it was one of my first, and in good ways too, because I was always known as a little ripper in the beach straight, and so it was a good win for me. It boosted my confidence immensely.
He was here in '84, won the event, came back the following year, said to me, if I go to Durban, can I come back and stay with you? I said, if you go and win the contest, you can come back and stay with me. Forgot about it. Sunday night I got a call. Hello, Cheron, this is Occhi. I just won the contest. Can I come back now?
People have a real affection for Occhi, spanning generations. He burst on as a 17-year-old kid who was just, capable of doing anything, blowing anyone out of the water. Those big tree stumps of legs, so much power in them. And I think they've served him well. I think he's been able to surf into his late 30s because he's been able to maintain a natural power base. And as the criteria changed and professional surfing changed to big moves and power surfing, he was still there. I mean, so as a contemporary figure, he's still right up there with the best of them.
You can call me Papa, I'll call you baby. Don't forget your mama's mind.
If you were to mind surf a perfect surfer's wave, and then you'd see Occhi surf it, you'd probably, you probably wouldn't be able to mind surf it as well as he would just free surf it. I watched him get a wave the other day. It was only 2 foot. It was like a real fast little surfer's wave, and he was going so fast on his backhand, and he was still able to fit in like really nice off the top turns. And there's probably only a few guys that could have done it, and more so backsiders, because the wave was so quick. It would have been hard to, frontside would have been hard to wash your speed off to do that turn. And personally, I think he's still hands down a level above all of us out here.
I will be there for you.
The monster heat of this year's contest was Mark Occhilupo against Bruce Irons. The popular stocky Aussie has been coming here for years, but at age 39, Occhi is nearing the end of his career, while Bruce is one of the hottest young guns on the tour. The heat was a real contrast in style and approach. Occhi was full power all the time, throwing enormous fountains of spray off every move. On each wave he put together a series of huge, powerful turns and massive carves off the top. Bruce surfed a completely different heat, far more surgical and thoughtful, and he focused on swooping carves that set him up for long, impossible tube rides. At 39 years of age, it is almost impossible to comprehend that Occhi is actually still improving, and that after this heat, many of his tour opponents were calling it some of the best backside surfing they'd ever seen. As great as Occhi surfed, nothing can beat insane tube rides. And on this day, Bruce Irons seemed to be in perfect sync with J-Bay, finding and making some of the best barrels of the entire contest. Occhi has a deep spiritual connection with J-Bay, and it inspired him to name his son Jay after the break. It's one of his favorite spots on the tour, and the fact that he feels so relaxed here really shows through his confident surfing. Despite losing the heat, Occhi mounted one of the greatest backside of attacks of all time.
Occhi's really got the trademark surfing out here, and I think a lot of backhand surfing around the world that's done these days is from what kind of surfing Occhi's done here at J Bay. We saw him today, unfortunately didn't get through, but did some of the best backhand surfing that we've ever seen out here, and at 39 it's a credit to him to be still surfing the way he is and still taking Jeffreys Bay apart the way he did today.
You know, I've had so many different memories, you know, of some perfect days, like where it's beautiful, and some dark, rainy days too, where it just doesn't look real, you know. It's just, you can't really see the corduroy lines coming through, but it just barrels forever, and it's just got the most all-time shape. I've seen some really good days out here, and then it's just an amazing wave.
The waves are not always perfect at Jeffreys. Swells sometimes completely miss the bay, and that is a perfect time to do some exploring. The forecast was for a straight south swell that would pass right by the eastly facing J Bay. However, the stretch of South African coastline directly north of Jeffreys offers many surfing options, and the crew was sure to find an exposed south-facing beach.
You go off that jetty, there's a little walkway. You can come off the end of the jetty.
You can jump off there.
It's easy.
These are two little guys. Justin and Dan.
Hands are cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are in the ocean. I'm surprised you don't got a full suit or something. You guys are used to it, huh?
They didn't believe Andy comes here, so.
We got the whole crew. There's Taj Burrows right over there, and Joe Parkinson.
Yeah?
We got the whole crew.
After watching Occhi and Bruce's heat, I came to the conclusion that there is a fundamental difference in the application of power between the first generation of pro surfers and the second. In the 70s, it was all about speed, power, and aggression. Full power, all the time. Modern surfing, however, is all about power and release. And in the 1980s, it was Martin Potter who showed everyone the way. Powered up, release, boost, and powered up again. Today, this is what surfing is all about. Powered up for the speed, released for the big turn or aerial, and powered up again with a beautiful smooth style. After watching Andy, Taj and Parko, I realized that today, not only do you have to surf radically, but you have to make it look really easy.
looking?
How about Peter Bagus, Donovan, and Shaun.
I'm not.
Unfortunately, most things in South Africa, if you talk history, has a political context to it. In the old days in apartheid, you had two distinct surfing unions. You had a surfing union that was for white, and they got to represent the country, as it were given national colors. And then you had a surfing union where there were black surfers or black sports people who were as good in soccer, rugby, cricket, surfing, that could never participate in the formal structures that were established by the country.
The South Africa of my youth was a segregated society. Discrimination and separation based on the color of your skin. Whites lived in one place and blacks lived in another. Unequal treatment was constitutionalized under the government system of apartheid, literally meaning apartness. In the ultra-conservative town of Jeffreys Bay, it was even against the law for a black person to surf on the whites-only beach.
We went out to surf, and some people from the beach had seen us. It was really early in the morning, so what they did was they called the cops. The cops came and called us out of the water. There was one guy, Warren Kushnick. He stood up for us. The white guy, he got hit with a baton and they broke all of his teeth for standing up for us, and we got locked up. Any black person coming here for any code of sport, including the Hawaiian surfers, would have a really hard time, and they'd have to be very, very protected.
Being the person I am, just took it on. I mean, anything that you don't think's right, you just can't fix it.
A white surfer that she had sponsored, his name was Davy Stoke. He surfed for the Springbok team, the national team, but he was very supportive of the democratic movement, and we were all student activists. We were heavily involved in politics, and he offered to help us by asking Cheron if she would sponsor this competition. And she said yes, she would. So we came up here, never knew Cheron, and she sponsored this competition. Of course, coming up here to surf a national event for black surfers, we weren't allowed on this very beach. You couldn't surf here, you couldn't walk on this beach, it was for whites only. And Cheron didn't know us, but she firstly put up the money to sponsor our competition. She organized the judges. That was the first shot in the arm, if you want, where black surfing was actually founded and established in Jeffreys Bay.
It wasn't to better the business. It wasn't a marketing ploy. It was just the right thing to do for surfing and for humanity. I mean, today we have probably 80 young development surfers in Jeffreys Bay.
Today it's fantastic to be able to come to Jeffreys Bay, to stay anywhere, don't have to go to any particular campsite, and live anywhere, can be right here on Super Tube, can go and surf anywhere, and that epitomizes, I think, the country, the development that we've had in the country, where we've come from a really, really dark path, and we've got a bright future. This country is doing fantastically economically, we've got fantastic leadership. We have an event like this every single year where we draw the top surfers in the world coming out here. It epitomizes, I think, the future of this country, and this contest plays a very, very important role in all of that.
Today, South Africa is the most democratic country in the world, and everybody enjoys equal rights. The surfers of Jeffreys Bay have played an important role in this country's quest for equality, and the local contest, despite once being radical and anti-establishment, has grown bigger and better each year. So in its 24th year running, the action is ready to continue at this year's Billabong Pro. It's a new day with a new swell, and it's up to contest director Mike Parsons to make the call.
You know, you've got this waiting period of 12 days, and you know, the storms are usually 5 or 6 days apart, and you know, you got wind issues here at J Bay because the wind is, you know, you get a bad northwest wind and it can ruin a whole swell. I mean, it's, you know, it's so difficult to ride this wave when the wind's howling out of the north. On the days we come down and check it, I consult with Perry Hatchett, who's the head judge, and Jake Patterson, who's the surfers rep, and they're both level-headed guys that look at the swell models, and we talk about, hey, these are our best options. My good friend is Shaun Collins at Surfline. I talk to him. I talk to a guy up at Seal Point every morning named Eric Stedman, who has the local conditions really wired. I just take all those opinions and then consult with the head judge and the surfers rep, and we make the call.
Well, it's probably one of the hardest places to forecast. It's a fair way up the east coast here, and it's in like a bay and a curve, and the swells actually have to come up and wrap a long way around. And a lot of the forecasting comes from seeing these big lows coming into Cape Town and thinking, oh, look at the size of this low. But once it comes around Cape Town, it's actually got to come all the way up the coast to get to J Bay. And it's a big ocean, the Indian Ocean, and once it comes around that cape, it can go anywhere. And usually, if there's a lot of warm weather up around the eastern capes here, it actually pushes the low pressure back down the coast, and it just goes across the bottom of the Indian Ocean. So it's a very hard place to predict, and myself as one of the votes, I just wake up and look every morning and take the decision from there.
After a week-long flat spell, the event resumed in much cooler and bigger conditions. The cold front had moved up from the Cape and brought with it rain, howling offshore winds, and a new 6 to 8 foot south swell. At this stage, the contest was halfway through, and 3 surfers seemed to be rising to the top: Kelly Slater, Joel Parkinson, and Andy Irons. Kelly Slater was running rampant, surfing at an extremely high level with absolute confidence and a total mastery of the wave and his equipment. Joel Parkinson had been cruising through heats with his laid-back, makes-it-look-too-easy style, and in round 4 he pulled off the most creative move of the contest, a huge carving 360 done in his trademark relaxed style. Modern competitive surfing is all about risk and commitment, and today the most radical surfing happens in heats, at contests in perfect waves like J Bay. Just like great athletes have the performances of their lives and break world records by being motivated to win at the Olympics, the same holds true for surfers in great contests on the WCT. Andy Irons won this event last year, and he too was dominating heat after heat. Andy's surfing is very critical and on edge, yet smooth and stylish, and that seems to be the winning combination at this place time after time. Going into the last day of competition, there seemed to be this electric buzz radiating throughout the beach. Slater and Irons were on a collision course, destined to meet in their first ever man-on-man final. Kelly and Andy will both go down in history as 2 of the best competitors to ever surf here at J Bay. But to see them surf head-to-head for the first time in a final heat in perfect 6 to 8 foot Jeffreys Bay was almost unimaginable. Well, Andy took out his brother Bruce and half a dozen other competitors, while Kelly polished off his side of the draw. And to my amazement, it was set to happen.
In Hawaii, Andy Irons.
I think one of the secrets of Andy Irons is that his comfort zone is it's wide, it's global. But when he's out in the heavy water, his comfort zone is in it. And that makes the world of difference, because the confidence I mean, I've seen him stroking through a back door, or it might be Le Grevier at 10 feet, and these are thumping, gnarly beach breaks, and he's caught inside. And he's duck diving as though it's 2 foot Huntington Beach. And he's just duck diving these things. Instead of being dragged backwards to the beach like any other mortal human would be, he is making ground on the thing. And he's duck diving closeouts and making ground. And he's just stroking normally. And that's when you look at that and you go, there's something about this guy. He's got a hidden power that's so sublime, that's so subtle that the human eye can't see it.
Over the past 4 years, the upper ranks of pro surfing have been dominated by Andy Irons and Kelly Slater. Andy clinched his first world title in 2002. The following year, Slater, a 6-time world champion in the 90s, came out of retirement to challenge him. Andy had been labelled the new dominant force in the sport. That year, the two had a historic showdown on the North Shore of Hawaii, ending with Andy taking claim of his second world title. Kelly lives for competition and for being number one. Andy's the only surfer out there that takes it to him hard, and the only surfer with the firepower to take him down. Kelly's been surfing J-Bay for over 12 years now, and most people on the bluff will tell you he is the best J-Bay surfer ever. One thing is for sure, having shared several sessions together with Kelly this year, he has a true mastery of J-Bay's pure line.
In my opinion, the pure line at Jeffreys Bay is you have to get in front of it. Surf 8 feet in front of where the thing's pitching, because you want to be out on the face and get those big S-turns. You want to be out far enough to where you can draw that turn back, or you can run to the next section. You don't want to be flirting with the lip and surfing right in the pocket at Jeffreys. You want to be out on the face. That's the beauty of the ride at Jeffreys. You throw the big S-turn out on the face. You let people see the line that you've drawn. You know, there's so much wave to work with there. You can draw the best lines of your life at the wave if you approach it the right way. I think there was one wave ridden at Jeffreys that kind of showed everyone how to ride it, and it was Tom Curren's, I think, second or third wave he ever rode at Jeffreys, and it was in Searching for Tom Curren. He was on a 7.3, which is a huge board for Jeffreys. It was in the early 90s. Sonny Miller shot it, and he did everything he could do on a wave at Jeffreys. The carves, the cutbacks, the bottom turns up into the barrel, coming backdooring sections, and it was really like the perfect ride for Jeffreys Bay, and I think that kind of set the standard for how you got to surf Jeffreys. And, you know, it's sort of an unspoken thing, I think, amongst surfers, that you see that wave and you go, okay, that's how you surf Jeffreys Bay.
It was set. The two greatest surfers of the modern era, 9 world titles between them, with a surf a head-to-head final matchup at the world's greatest right-hand point break. Rabbit Bartholomew and I were hosting the webcast to fans all over the world, and hundreds of emails were piling in for both surfers. We'd both been there at the beginning of the whole pro surf movement, when we could barely make enough money to get from contest to contest. But we believed it could happen, and wave by wave, contest by contest, we helped lay the foundation. Today, the industry is worth billions, and surfing has created its own global community with people from over 30 countries joining together via the web to watch the greatest surfers in the world. The final was a seesaw affair with neither surfer laying down his authority. With around 5 minutes to go, Andy connected on a great smooth wall, locking in a solid score and a seemingly unassailable lead. By now, now both guys had surfed 4 heats on the day, and a strong rip had them feeling exhausted. Andy rode so far down the point he had no way of getting back into the lineup in time. That left Slater out the back, needing a 9.3 with only a minute to go. Way down the beach, Andy had begun celebrating as Slater waited and waited and waited. 3 waves swung into the point as the seconds ticked down. Slater, with nerves of stone, waited for that 3rd wave. He paddled, and with 30 seconds to go, a huge roar went through the crowd, a collective cry of encouragement for the most popular surfer in the world, a demand for a score of 9.3. Rabbit and I glanced at each other. This is what pro surfing is all about. It was the same then at the start as it is now. Taking it to the absolute limit of your ability with absolute commitment, with absolutely no time left. Sometimes I burn like a shot on the sun. Kelly went on to post a 9.5 and take the Billabong Pro from the current world champ. I have never ever seen him so outwardly elated at a contest victory, and I have never seen Andy so bitterly disappointed. There's an unusual relationship between these two amazing surfers, a mutual realization that without each other, they wouldn't quite be who they are.
Well, in my wildest dreams, I never thought surfing would get as big as it is. When we were surfing kids, my day, we were told, why are you a beach bum? Why don't you go and get a decent job? Why don't you go to school? What are you doing? You're just a beach bum. And then for it to grow into what it is now, and you know, all these people that were pretending not to like surfing, really loved surfing, and just didn't have the courage to come and do what we were doing. So we just stuck with it because we were so passionately involved with it. The lifestyle, just riding waves, and the hunt for waves.
It was the search for the perfect wave that first brought me to Jeffreys Bay back in 1968. And that same perfect wave is the reason that I returned this year. As I prepared for the long plane ride back to California, I thought back to the great surfers that had left their mark on the long walls at Jeffreys. Max Wetteland, the father of South African surfing, has been coming to J-Bay for over 40 years now and continues to be an influence in the local surf industry. Ocky's going to retire at the end of this year, and as a result of his backhand performances at J-Bay and Bells Beach, he will go down in the history books as perhaps the greatest 50-foot surfer of all time, certainly the most powerful. Kelly Slater's win at J-Bay catapulted him to the top of the rankings and just about sealed the deal to win a record-setting 7th world title, a feat that will cement him in history as the greatest surfer of all time. As for me, this is the place that defined my surfing. It was in the long green barrels of impossibles where I developed techniques for turning and riding inside the tube. On the wide open walls of supers, I learned to focus my energy into powerful, sweeping, carving surfing. I took what I learned at J-Bay to every break, wherever I surfed throughout the surfing world. The magic of Jeffreys has inspired and touched thousands of traveling surfers over the years. And though I'd been gone for over 12 years, Returning this year, I felt as if I had never left. Like a far distant whisper on the wind, I can hear that southwester now, howling and growling, and tugging at my thoughts with fierce wind gusts. Up at the top of the point, a young surfer connects with the perfect wave of the set and flies through section after section, traveling faster than he's ever surfed before, totally flat out, muscles straining, looking down the line at the next impossible section, mind, body and board in perfect sync with the wave, discovering what he's been truly looking for, that elusive, pure line. Jeffreys Bay truly is the greatest right-hand point break in the world. I hadn't been back since this time. I hadn't been back here to Jeffreys Bay for 13 years. And when I first started coming here, there wasn't a house along this point. Nothing at all. It was just sand dunes and a little campsite. And certainly to come back after 13 years, a massive shock.
Jeffreys Bay was a little fishing village, really, at the end of the day. Surfers put this place on the map. They weren't well liked in the early days. But I mean, they had to accept us because obviously we were bringing revenue into this town.
When we first started coming here, the surfing community was not welcome here at Jeffreys Bay. But it's amazing what difference economics makes.
I think Jeffreys will always be pretty much a magical place. Even with all the development, the waves still break, it does get crowded, there's hassling, there's a bit of localism, there's all that. I mean, that's pretty much part and parcel of surfing all over the world. But I still think it's a great place. Looking back to the years gone by, it was great then, but in real terms, it's still great now.
And with this pen and page break the routine, and with this pen and page engage the machine, and with these words engage to deface the regime, and with these thoughts and rays I will blaze with my team.
It'd be nice to actually make this place a reserve from the Caballero right the way up to maybe the main beach and preserve this, because I mean, if you look out into the ocean here, when you see dolphins here and see whales here, I mean, not many places in the world where you see that.
You know, people can build what they want here. I think that the essence remains.
Shaun surfed there. I saw him surf this year, and he said he hadn't been there in like 12 or 13 years. He was on the best wave in almost every set for 3 days. He reads the wave really well. You can tell when he takes off, you can see it in his eyes. He's looking 200 yards down the line. It just so happened there's never anyone deeper than him that could make the wave, and he was always in the right spot. He has this little lineup out there, and I don't think he really shares it with anybody.
Jeffreys Bay is the easy wave to ride. It's a very difficult wave to ride well. Very difficult to ride well. Even today, out of all the greatest surfers in the world, there's probably 4 guys that ride this wave well. And the whole power release style sometimes doesn't fit in with the way you need to ride J-Bay, because J-Bay is down super fast down the line, and it's more of a power and power the whole way. So the guys that can adapt to that, almost like an old school concept, are the guys that surf here brilliantly. Kelly, Andy, Joel, and these guys are obviously right at the forefront of the modern power release school. But they kind of seem to synthesize the old school technique of power all the time with this wave. The pure line is what this wave is all about.